From the headquarters of the Guild of Champions, this is the Chris Terrell Podcast, and I am your host, Chris Terrell, and welcome to another week of your weight loss quest. How did this last week go for you, champion? What new challenges did you encounter? But more importantly, what failure did you experience, and what lesson did you get from that failure? Come on now. Don't let a perfectly good failure go by without you getting your lesson. That's your reward for your troubles. Now, if you're new here, I've lost 125 pounds myself after an entire adulthood of chronic yo-yo dieting. Up, down again. Before I finally got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I made some permanent, meaningful, and actual changes to my lifestyle, habits, routines, environment, community, and to my systems of belief. Because it's all of those things that created you, they're all those things that create me. And if you want to get new results in your life, you got to go change them at the source. Now this week, got a very special interview. Got somebody that's lost, well, a lot more weight than even I've lost. You see, hearing stories of success is so crucial to success because you need to make the notion of the achievement that you're trying to get, you need to make it commonplace. You need to make it a foregone conclusion that if you just do the right things enough time, it's going to happen. That's why a community is so important, because you can surround yourself with successful people. Look, if you run around with a bunch of losers, you're going to end up like a loser. You want to run around with winners. We all know this. Well, if you want to become good at losing weight and keeping it off, you want to become good at this, you need to surround yourself with winners. And one of the things you can do is go find stories of winners in the absence of the actual people in your life. And you can learn how they got there, because you're going to learn that every victory story is riddled with failure, riddled with difficulties, riddled with hard times, ups and downs, and it rarely goes according to plan. It usually takes longer than they think it would, than they'd like it to. And hearing these stories is important because your own journey is going to be no different. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're going to have hard times, you're going to have easy times, you're going to have times where you feel like giving up, times that you feel motivated and inspired. You're going to have, the journey's going to take probably far longer than you think it should. And all of this is stuff that if you're not ready for it, you might get discouraged and quit. And so as you come into this, I want you hearing this story from Misty, is her name, and really thinking of like, what are the lessons you need? Look, she's already done. She made it to dream body territory. Like literally a doctor has told her, you don't need to lose anymore. You're good. You're fine. Leave it be, right? So she made it to the area where like you don't need to lose any weight. And her, just like me, that's never happened before. So no matter where you're at on your journey, you need to hear her story, not because you need to copy her story directly. No, that's her life. You live your life. But there are lessons that you can get because success always leaves clues. Success leaves a trail of breadcrumbs. So listen to the breadcrumbs that are being left behind. Now, before we hop over to the interview, I want to invite you to come join my free Facebook group. If you've not already done that, you can find a link to that by going to christerrellcoaching.com. And I would also love to invite you, the Apple Podcast listeners, to leave a rating and a review of the podcast. Now, if you have not yet done so, please give me a few episodes, though, right? If you're new here to the podcast, give me a handful of listens to earn that rating and review, because I'd like to invite you to leave a 5-star review, but I want to have a chance to earn it. And if you're on Spotify, you are able to leave a comment directly on the episode that I can read. I would love it if you left a comment. You can find that in the show notes there of your Spotify app there on your phone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking now. I'm going to pass the mic over to me and Misty, and I'm going to let you hear her really cool story of success. Hi, Misty.
Hi.
So for everybody listening, first let's start with how much weight have you lost?
185 pounds.
185 pounds. Over what period of time?
3.5 years.
3.5 years. So that took a minute to do. Have you ever actually averaged that out? Do you know what your average was?
No.
185, or say 1,277 days divided by 7. So 182 weeks. How many pounds? How much weight did you say you just lost?
185.
185. So you lost, it was just a smidge under a pound a week on average.
Right. It felt really fast sometimes. Like some years I was like, oh, I lost 50, 60 pounds this year. And then the next one was 30.
So the rate of weight loss was not consistent the whole time.
Mm-mm.
Did you ever have any big long stretches where it just didn't move much?
Yeah. Especially that like bottom 45. After I was in the 100s, I think it was like 195 for 3 or 4 months. And then it started going really fast again. It went 2 pounds or so a week. And then bottom 25 took I don't know, the last 8 months were 8 or 9 months were the last 20.
How much did you weigh at your biggest, and what did you weigh, or where are you at now?
My highest was 318, and before I came out for this trip, I was 133.
Okay, and for people listening, so they have a point of context, they're trying to compare themselves from where you're at. How old were you when you started your journey?
43?
43?
44?
And how tall?
5'4".
5'4". Okay. For everybody listening, this rate of weight loss of averaging about a pound a week, I mean, that's not unusual. Mine was 0.75, I think, 0.8, something like that. It wasn't over a pound a week average. But like you, I also had those weeks where it like moved fast, and then weeks where nothing happened.
Right. You see it on the scale like 0.2, and you're like, it counts. Anytime it was down 0.2, it counted. But if I was up 2, I'd be like, that's inflammation for sure.
Right. All right. Take us to the beginning. How did you find yourself at that highest weight?
I was always big. My baby photos have pictures, and my mom would say, you could tell how old you were by how many rolls were down your thighs. And I was like, oh, that's really cute, because I was just a chubby baby. Mm-hmm. But my mom is very thin, maybe ED thin, and my dad is really small too. But my grandparents, my grandmas on both sides were bigger. So it was always kind of you're like Grandma Lois, and that was fine. I was in the first grade, and a kid said, did you see that you're the biggest kid in here? And I was like, oh, crap. Yeah, I guess I am the biggest kid. That's weird. I just didn't really put 2 and 2 together, but I just accepted it as like fate. It was just meant to be.
And how old were you again when
I was
that
in
happened?
the first grade, so 6, 7. Like, it was very fundamentally, I'm the big one in here.
Well, that seems like an early age to arrive at that sort of awareness.
Yeah, I felt like it didn't even feel bad per se. I mean, it was kind of like crappy that you're the biggest kid, but it was also just what it is. Like, that's just, I'm like my Grandma Lois. That's how I am. I'm just big like my family, but my direct, immediate biological family are not big.
So at a very early age, you were thinking of yourself in terms of like, I'm bigger. I'm a big person. Like, where I fit, this is how I am. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So continue.
So it wasn't, I didn't really do a lot of sports because I'm bigger, I'm slower. Like all the things that go with that was me. Randomly, I was good at hurdles in the 7th grade. I don't know how that worked out, but it was the only time I was ever picked for a team to play something. I just really resolved that I was bigger, but it also kind of gave you permission to have habits and behaviors and food relationships that were for big people. So I didn't really do anything that a thin person would do. Like, it was just something I didn't do. If I was never dished a small piece of cake, it was just an accepted standard. It's such a weird dynamic.
What do you mean? You saying like people would serve you bigger portions of food?
Yeah, it was really a weird thing in my family that I was just the big one. She's going to have seconds. It was just a thing. It's weird when I talk about it even, because I don't know that that's how parents think that they're being, but it was always a point of contention that I also needed to lose weight in the same breath. Like, I was always I think I was in middle school and I had Slim Fast, like shakes my mom would make for me, my bio
Really?
mom. Yeah. It was so it was always this kind of conflict of everybody knows I'm the big one, but I'm also the one that needs to work on it. Mm-hmm. It's no wonder I have no like reasonable sense of like self-esteem or body image as an adult. I had no idea, just accepted it as what it was.
A lot of focusing on it, and not necessarily in a empowering self-esteem building way.
Right. I don't know what that would even look like. Even now, I don't know what that would look like with a kid to be in a healthy kind of empowering way, because it was never brought up that way with me. I just had really bad coping mechanisms, I think.
And you mentioned Slim Fast, so you were pretty young when you first started dieting then. Mm-hmm. What were some of the diets you did when you were younger? Do you remember?
Slim Fast for sure. I think my mom always watched Oprah, so whatever Oprah said was the thing. Oprah said if you needed to lose weight, ask a fat person. They know how to lose weight. So I would be like watching what bigger people would do to think like they know how to lose weight. I'm going to watch them and see what they do. Also wasn't helpful to model big people.
You know, it's funny now at this point in my life when I reflect back, because I had the same logic too. When I look back on it now, it honestly is like, it's the blind leading the blind is the analogy that comes to mind.
Sure.
What do you think when you hear it phrased that way?
Absolutely, for sure. And it was such an innocent place. I would get help from one failed diet after another. In the 80s, Jenny Craig was really popular. So I was born in 1978, so 80s, early 90s. I was in high school in the 90s. And I think I didn't know that you could, I didn't know that eating less would help you lose weight until I saw a Full House episode, it had to have been early 90s, where she was not eating to lose weight, one of the middle characters. But I was like, oh, that's how you do it. But even though the episode talked about how it was disordered for her to do it that way, I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Dang, I should just exercise a ton and not eat at all. It's just wild because there's just wasn't any information out there that you could find that would be healthy kind of dynamic.
Yeah, I found for me that was one of the big draws I had to Weight Watchers in the early 2000s, is because it gave me access to what I really needed at the time, which was information, points. I could look up, I had the books, and I had where I could look up the points of foods at restaurants and things. That was useful then. But yeah, without the internet and stuff, yeah, it really was hard to come across new ideas and new ways of losing weight and sharing what worked and what didn't.
Right. And it was always bad. Like you'd see somebody try Weight Watchers and then they would fail out of it. And all the Nutrisystem ones where they'd have the pants, they'd be standing in one pant leg, and you're like, I want to lose weight like that. Because I was still in high school, I was 220 pounds or so. I had gotten down to like 190 was my lowest high school weight, and I was really not eating and like running around my neighborhood several times a day. Significantly more movement than I'd ever done before without any food at all, just like starving and trying so hard. And there was a season where I wasn't really sure where my next meals were coming from when I was moving out of my bio family's home and into more of an adopted situation. So having that like limited access to food created like a food scarcity thing, but it also, I did drop some weight, got to 190, but it wasn't long. I got pregnant with my daughters, had all of my kids. So as an adult, I was always 250. Like 250 pounds was my standard body weight. It didn't matter what I tried. I did like P90X twice. I always think of like what was the longest time I was in a diet. I did 2 rounds of P90X, and that was probably the like longest I ever stayed with any one program. And I did lose 30 pounds or so, but I would quickly put it, as soon as I stopped doing it, you just put it right back on.
Got it. So there was this cycle of yo-yoing, the going down, doing something, going up, the going down, going up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure.
So when like you were talking about the P90X runs, were you altering food, or was it just, were you trying to out-exercise everything?
No, it was the food diet too. It had like, I don't know if it was part of the P90X program or something, but it was like little cups. So you'd put all your vegetables in the green cup, and you'd put all your proteins in the purple cup, and you could have these cups 3 times a day. So you had to eat the green cup 4 times. It was but I think P90X was mostly like just eat protein and vegetables and that's it. But these cups were left over from a different one. I have not
heard of the cups one, but I could see why it would be a thing, because you're trying to teach portion size, but we don't need the same portion every day. Correct. At every meal.
Correct.
It varies.
It was a lot of chicken and broccoli. Like how many chickens can fit in this protein cup and how many vegetables can fit in this cup? And it was so boring, and you're never going to stick with it.
So you said 250 was the weight you tended to stay as an adult. Was there any like ever drastic swings down, or was it sort of like up, down 20 or 15, 20 pounds, up 15, 20? Like what kind of swings were you seeing?
If I was trying to lose weight, I would go down to like 230. If I was really on whatever new program I found, I really feel bad for my family, like my husband who's done all these diets with me. I would go down 20, but then I would come back up 30 or 40. So I would say like 250 is the average amount, but it definitely was like 285 for a long time, because I would swing just as high up afterwards. If I maintained a clean eating life for the most part, I would just stay. I was able to maintain 255, 258 if I tried to maintain and be consistent with clean eating. But anytime I dieted, I could get down to 230. But if I let go of the reins even a little bit, it was like a thermostat almost that was kind of set. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't pay attention, it's easy to maintain and eat and live this lifestyle. And that's why you kind of stay on that same area. Mm-hmm. But at the time I was like, this is a lot of work. I didn't move a lot. My job was pretty sedentary.
Yeah, I think I used to think of my weight like holding a beach volleyball, you know, the big air inflatable ones, like holding it underwater. Holding it underwater was dieting and intense exercise. But the moment I stopped dieting, it's like it would just go right back up. Is what it always felt like. It felt uncontrollable. Like I can't stop it.
Right. It did. And it wouldn't change me from giving it 110% to the next diet that came down the trail.
That's right.
Like it didn't make me even think for 1 second that maybe this was the same dynamic again. I just kept trying them.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, well, I just didn't hold on long enough, or maybe I needed to try a different grip, you know, kind of leaning in with the metaphor. So, but for you at 250, were you 250 when you would start losing weight, or would you kind of creep above it by some amount and then start bringing it down?
I would have crept up to 275, 285, I think. And then I would get down to 250, feel pretty good about it, kind of settle there, and then dip down. The lowest I ever dipped was 203, and that was like a really intense protein only kind of diet.
So it would be more extreme.
Yes. Like just protein, that's it, nothing else. 500 calories. There was one, like HCG, you could have 400 calories a day, and you had these pregnancy hormone shots you injected with.
Wait, 400 calories a day total?
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough food.
No, it didn't. It was really hard to maintain, I'm sure. It was awful.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
It was terrible. It was like, and it was volumetric based, so you ate a lot of food. I was eating all the time, but it was like celery and wasa crackers with cucumbers on it. So it was like you're getting 3 or 4 meals with 100 calories, and you'd feel full, honestly, but not long. And you're just always jittery and shaky, not able to maintain it. But I never felt like I was not eating at all, because it was just 0 calorie kind of food all day. Pickles was one of the other things you could have. It was miserable.
And I did an 800 calorie a day one, which is equally not enough food. But yeah, I never fantasized more about food than when I was eating 800 calories a day. Like a billboard would cause me to fantasize about a burger. It would be so intense. Like the fantasization. Wow, that word's not coming out of my mouth.
Great
but
job.
Yeah, right. But no, it was. I remember going on a road trip. I'm doing it, and I couldn't handle the billboards, because every single one would just send me into this frenzied-like desire to eat.
Right.
When I was under eating that much.
Right.
And then I remember I get to a hotel and I get 5 Baby Bell cheese things in wax. And I felt like I am just the worst dieter ever, because I went back to my hotel and I ate these things in shame because I just wasn't strong enough to hang on to 800 calories a day only.
Right. It's so messed up. It's like it's always like, I'm broken because I don't have the willpower to do this. And it's not helpful when one person, just one, all it takes is one to say this is effective. And then it's like, well, if it's effective for you, then I'm 100% the problem.
Yeah, because now it's someone to measure yourself up against, to be like, see, you're not good enough.
Right.
Yeah, it's
rough.
It is rough. And the problem is with the ones that make it, they usually aren't circling around and showing us how they look 3 years later. Sometimes, sure, but not usually.
Right.
Gosh, but it was interesting what you said. You would creep up to like 270, 280. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would do something about it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you would begin to feel, what would usually trigger you to lose weight at those numbers back then?
I only wore stretchy clothes, and not like workout clothes. A totally different vibe, like 2X, 3X women's clothes, especially. I don't know if it's the same for men. Probably it is. But it would be the big flowy straight shirt and the stretchiest elastic kind of shorts or pants you could find. And if they were getting to be a problem, and you could fit into those clothes a good 25, 30 pounds before you need to change either size. But if they became to where I would have to buy like a 4X, I wouldn't. I'd be like, oh man, I gotta get in here, because I could be 285 and 255 and still fit in that 3X size clothes. It was such a big, the way it was made or manufactured was such a big window of weight you could fit into. So if I couldn't fit into this like 3X, then it was a trigger, kind of like the last straw if I can't fit these clothes.
So it was still clothing, but you were picking clothes that had a wide variance of body sizes could fit it. And I've had this theory that one of the things that people do that contributes to their weight gain is they will buy clothes that are oversized or that they can stretch into or that stretch with them. Because what it does is it deprives the person of the discomfort of their size getting bigger. Like you don't have that resistance. But what's interesting is you're saying it was that resistance of, oh no, these clothes no longer fit. But you bought clothes that would allow you to gain 20 pounds before you'd feel that.
Right.
Do you think if you had picked clothes that didn't have so much tolerance, you would have started losing weight sooner?
Probably. Money was a factor always. So it was always, I was living really frugally and I didn't want to buy new clothes. It wasn't even so much the size of me. It was mostly frugality.
So it wasn't actually it wasn't, oh no, I have to get bigger size clothes. It's, oh no, I have to spend money on more clothes because these no longer fit.
Right. And you have these perfectly good clothes. So it's kind of a maybe shame in being wasteful. Like this is a resource I have available and I'm being wasteful by not buying it. And then I should do something about it. But it wasn't really, I think I really accepted that I was just a bigger person. And that was fine. It was just going to be.
Now you said that the weight was higher. And I had these numbers too, right? That I would like, for me, 250 was one for a while. And then eventually it became 260. I'm not going to let myself get above 260. And eventually I took my hand off the reins and didn't check again until I was 290. My coworker had said, I don't know why I keep fighting my body. I think I'm just going to be okay with being over 300. I remember having this conversation with myself in my head, like, well, would I be okay if I weighed 300 pounds? It seems like it's probably inevitable I'm going to weigh over 300 pounds. Am I okay with that? I couldn't get myself to let go of the reins to do that. But I remember earlier I would just let go of the reins. And you had this moment of 270, 280-ish. How did you find yourself north of that?
Like one last failed diet that I really had worked hard on gaining the weight, had got me down to 203. And
Wow.
And it was like really hard. It wasn't pleasant, but it was like 203. I could be here. And then
you were knocking on the door of Wonderland.
Right. And it was in a surgery. I wanted bariatric so bad, couldn't have it. And had to go through the process of getting bariatric surgery. It looks like something. It looks like just protein shakes for 6 weeks. So you lose a lot of weight during that time. And then I had surgery. They found a tumor in my stomach and said, sorry, you're ineligible for this. We had to remove the tumor though, and your stomach still has to heal. So you'll probably lose a little bit more weight, but just be careful, keep doing what you're doing and you'll be great. You'll probably be fine, was the response from that. And I did lose some good weight, got down pretty low to 203. But it was kind of like the hope of, I just thought that the bariatric was the only way to fix that I would be overweight forever. And when they took that away, it was like, well, now I'm the big person who doesn't have this solution. So that was the one lifeline that you were clinging to, hope that if I could just get weight loss surgery, I don't have to be the big person anymore. Yeah.
And then that was ripped from you.
Correct.
How did you feel emotionally?
It was awful. I was like, forget it. I'm not doing it anymore. And I that was 2016. And at the beginning of 2018, I was at 318. And it was like so fast. So it takes 3 years to take that weight off, but it was fast. I just was like, my husband loves me. My life is good. My family is supportive here. All my clothes in the closet fit. It was like, fine, this is just what it's going to be forever.
So I want to kind of say it back how I'm hearing it. I'm about to really reduce this. You had the lifeline, weight loss surgery. This is now taken from you. Would it be fair to say then a feeling of hopelessness now, of like, this could never be fixed, that sank in?
For sure.
And so once that got in, it just sort of came this like, fuck it thing?
Right. Because it was like if I'm broken, fundamentally just broken, and I have always been the broken one, and this is the only way that you can cure it, because I've already have pretty good evidence that dieting is ineffective. A lot of failed dieting attempts. So this is the last thing. And in fact, when I was going to do bariatric surgery, I didn't even have to try any new diets because they were like, well, you've tried all of them, so they're ineffective. We'll do this and it'll be done. So when that was like taken away, I already knew dieting wasn't going to work. And if that didn't work either, there was no point in the hardness of dieting. There's no point in that. I might as well just have a life with how it is now with my old lifestyle, the way I did it, to just carry me through forever because it was easier. Dieting has always been difficult in the way that I had dieted before. So I was like, I don't want to have to do dieting. I know it's going to fail and there's just no way out of it. I'm just going to be this big person forever. And just that acceptance of it. So it's like a really deep pit of like, you just take away someone's hope for whatever they may have. And then that hope kind of gets ugly. And then you got to accept it. And then this is what it is. It's just genetic. I'm just genetically like this.
That acceptance. Yeah. This is just how I am. I mean, it's a lot of people don't come back from that though. Like when they get in there and they completely get in their pit of, I'm going to say helplessness with it. It's not like I ever called it that, but that's what it was. I just felt helpless about it and I was hopeless that it could be fixed. And if I'm going to be big, I might as well be happy while I'm doing it, right? I might as well enjoy myself. I was like, no matter what I do, I'm going to get big. So I might as well eat whatever I want. And I really wasn't trying to stop myself from getting bigger though. Like there were a lot of things that I was doing that I just slowly stopped doing. But I didn't pay attention to it or think of it in those terms. On your way up to the highest, what did you think as you were creeping up like to that 275, 285 number and then now going above it? Because you had proven to yourself you could stay between 275 and 250. But, how did you allow yourself to go beyond that number?
I don't really feel like my body prohibited me from doing things. I think that's also kind of the double-edged sword of being good and bad because I was just big, I accepted it. It didn't prevent me from doing life. I would still try to go on amusement park rides where it was like trying to buckle you in and it barely fit and to get other people to help. And I was just like, well, that's what it is. It is what it is. It didn't prevent me from living my life. So I think that it didn't change my life, but then it also gives way to all these permissive things where I'm like, well, I can just do it. It doesn't matter. I had good life experiences. So it wasn't negative. It wasn't until Hannah's wedding photos came back because And Hannah is? My daughter, okay. One of my daughters. When her wedding photos came back, that day I felt so beautiful. And You're saying when you were at the wedding, yes, you felt beautiful? Yes. And it's my before photo. It's my favorite before photo because I absolutely loved how I looked that day. And the pictures, I was like so open. I danced with Carl crazy. Like people were like, oh, you look beautiful. You guys are such a great couple. And when I saw the photos, I almost felt like somebody had lied because I was so big in them. And it's not that I think I was ugly in the photos, but I had like zero, like the reality of me being that size had not occurred to me at all. Like I was totally shocked that it wasn't like an amusement park mirror. When seeing myself, it was like I had to see the reality of what 318 pounds looked like because that was when I was definitely 318 or better. But when I saw it, I was totally floored that was me. Like I still don't think that that's me. As you were gaining up to the highest, it sounded like you were saying you were living your best life, but living your best life meant paying zero mind of any kind to the physical size at a minimum, but maybe even the condition of your body until you had this photo that just totally shattered that illusion and gave you a rude awakening. Is that? Yes. It really felt like that? Absolutely, for sure. I was like, these pictures are going to be on people's walls. Like this photo of me is going to be everywhere. I don't want anyone to ever see it. And it's my daughter's wedding photos. I was so embarrassed. And Carl was like, no, you look beautiful. But I was like, but are we seeing the same photo? And if we are seeing the same photo, like you're just lying because this isn't a beautiful shape. And I'm still me. I'm a good person, and I still was beautiful in that day. But I didn't recognize that I was beautiful in that body at that day. I thought I was beautiful in not this body, but maybe like somewhere in the middle's body. Well, if I may ask, and again, I'm speaking as somebody that also has a before photo. I've had many people tell me I looked handsome before. Mm-hmm. Many. But when Chris Terrell looked at himself in that mirror, Chris Terrell didn't like what he saw. Like when I saw the photos of me, I couldn't be truthful and say, I am proud that this is what my body looks like. I am proud of this. I couldn't say that. And it wasn't that I thought it was ugly. It's just I wasn't proud. That's a good way to say it. Because I loved my life. I loved me. And I don't think I'm not what is it, like body positive, this body positivity movement. I don't want to like discourage that kind of attitude about it. I really did love that day and me, but I would never have shown that photo to anybody in my personal life had I not had this one to compare it to. I think I would still have it tucked in a drawer somewhere. I don't
if
know
it wasn't
that I
a
would
before
show it.
photo, it might
Right.
still be hidden.
No one would have seen it that I know. Absolutely not.
Oh, I have many a photo like that I have one my brother sent me. He goes, because I had asked people in my life to send me before photos, and he's like, I don't think you've ever seen this one. And he sent it to me. I was like, God, really? Like, I'm glad. I mean, if I had seen that, the diet would have started that day.
That's what I thought. That's kind of was mine too. I was like, okay, I know I can't diet, but I don't know what I can do, but I'll do something.
Something. I'm not going to keep looking like this.
Right.
Okay. So you see this photo. Is this your oh shit moment that started a change in direction?
I think so. I don't have like a moment where I was like, this is a different, where I'm going to go heads first into this other area. But it definitely changed that I would consider it because I was still I'm stuck here, but I was willing to do something different. Like I've got to do something.
But this was born out of a place of like, I can't do anything about it without the weight loss surgery. Like, how did you, and yeah, I get you saw the photo, but like, how did you change that? Like, how did you get out of that pit of like, there's nothing I can do about this?
I don't know. I think I just had to, like, looking at it and being like, I've got to do something, or at least be able to say I'm doing something. I have to be able to reconcile this that I'm not happy about with some sort of action. I'm an actioner. So what's something logically that I can do? Which I think this is where phones are pretty good, where they listen to your conversations that you're having with yourself, because it's like, hey, maybe you should follow this person, or maybe you should get more of this kind of stuff. Because all my social media has kind of started changing to people who were doing intuitive eating, different TikTokers. Like at that time, kind of at the same time where I'm like, I can just do one thing a little bit better. And I started by just walking at the airport. I had all these rules. Like if I was going to do any exercise, I needed to be getting paid for it. So I would do it.
So you work at an airline.
I work at an airport. So I'm like, I'll have to, if I'm going to do this, I'll walk. I'll walk in between flights. And it can't even be like my government paid sponsored lunch break. They had to be like actual on the clock time in between flights where I have to get from one point A to point B, and I'll go the long way and get that in and get paid for it. And I was able to find the time in my work day to make that work.
You're saying in the beginning you started doing that at your biggest. Do you? I know that was a while ago, but do you remember what kind of step counts you were getting?
Before this, probably like 7,000 or 8,000 a day. But when I wasn't working, I would get 1,000 or 2,000.
Okay, so on a work day, you're getting plenty of steps. Non-work days, you're still
tanking.
Very sedentary. Now you said the 7,000 to 8,000. Is that what you were getting after the intentional shift, or was that what you were getting before?
That's after shifting. I would would have gotten like 4,000. I usually when I work at the airport, I work in one hallway. So it's like the gates are 1 through 14. So I'll walk in between those gates, have a lunch, work 4, 5, 6 flights a day. But it was not great distances. But then I was like, I'll use the restroom in the other hallway. So I'll walk over to the other hallway and back, or I'll walk the long way to this concourse in the beginning of the day. So I really was just kind of sneaking in a little bit more. But I guess doubling them was pretty good, but it didn't feel like a ton more steps in the beginning.
Now, why did you start there, though? Like, what made you decide to start with? I mean, I get you. You're saying you do something logical, but you could have done so many things. Why did that one rise to the top of your first actions?
I think I wasn't ready to deal with any food stuff. It was like the food side of the equation. I really wanted to move a little bit more, not have to change anything with eating.
Well, before we dive into the change, so we've really describe your relationship with food in those years, because I know our relationship with food is always changing anyway, but in those couple of years leading up to your biggest, what was your relationship with food like?
Before I was in my biggest, when my kids were all really little, we were really poor. So we had lots of simple carb kind of foods, a lot of them, very little protein at all. I used to always say like healthy food is really expensive. We couldn't afford it, that sort of kind of permissiveness. But then when our kids are older now, so we moved to Arizona, kind of changed. We uprooted our whole life into a whole new place and had a different quality of life where we had more flexibility with money and more availability. So we were able to eat more bigger meals. And I think we just ate a lot, really big meals, a lot of snacks, and no vegetables really. It would be nothing for me to have like 3,000 or 4,000 calories in a day. It was very common. And it was like a lot of bigger meals, and probably out of like a place of scarcity from before. And now you have this luxury to buy whatever you want and have whatever you want whenever you want it. I could have a thought like, I would like a cheeseburger with extra fries. I would get a quarter pounder from McDonald's, supersized, of course. And then I would have that in my body and digesting in 8 minutes flat. Like I could think it, get it, have it, eat it, and be done. And moving on to the next thing quick. So I just had, it was easy to acquire, but I used it for every kind of feeling. Any kind of coping mechanism was food related. I had nothing else. I sometimes use music, but that would be the only thing. Like if I had any kind of feeling that I couldn't fix, it was always a food one. And when I was a mom, it was always being overwhelmed or being tired. Too much month, not enough money. Like I would just food would be the solution.
Now, what were your, it's one of my favorite things to ask in a live meeting is to say, hey, what was your emotional eating food? Because everybody's is different. There's no like universal food that everybody turned to. But I'm always curious to hear, is it savory? Is it sweet? Is it this? But for you, what were your go-tos or meals or snacks even?
Meals would be the quarter pounder from McDonald's. That is easy. It's like 2 blocks from my house still. Those terrible chicken and a biscuit crackers. Have you ever had that where it's just
Those
salt?
Those are so good. That's so hard to stop eating.
It's just salt and some cracker underneath all of it. And Reese's peanut butter cups for sure.
Now for me, I know I tended to, I would certainly have my binges, but I just ate a lot every day. My default day, like a typical day in the life of me, it was a lot of calories. I didn't know it was calories at the time. It was just a lot of food. What was a day in the life of Misty like, that year leading up to the year when you started making changes with food?
So first I would skip breakfast because that would be like the healthy thing to do. I wouldn't have any breakfast. So by the time lunch would roll around, I would be so starving. I would have like I would probably have a healthy-ish lunch, the one that I would still consider a healthy lunch.
Now, hold on. Before you go further, you kind of said that interesting. So did you say you skipped breakfast because it felt like you were starting your day off with a healthy choice?
Correct.
Now that you know what you know, how do you feel about that?
I was almost like, oh man, please don't ask me this because it's going to be so crazy.
Well, because you got your nutritionist certification now.
Right.
So it's like, that makes no sense.
Correct.
But the motive was enough to keep you doing it.
Correct. And it's kind of like that goes with intermittent fasting where it's like, yep, I would have no breakfast and then have a salad or a sandwich or a soup, something that I would still even now be like, that's a good lunch. And then it would be blitzrag the whole rest of the night. Like dinner is, who knows what dinner is going to be. It might be, no, it would be crazy. Something, we'd have spaghetti and all the sauce and all the cheese. And then I'd have more. And then we would get like is it The Hobbit where it's like twosies, dinner, supper?
Yes. A second breakfast, 11sies or whatever. Candace knows it all.
That's it. We'd have dinner twice. And then, of course, we're going to have some sort of crazy dessert. And
dessert is default.
Correct. And it was like, so I would always say before I hardly eat at all. I don't even eat breakfast. I hardly eat at all. I just had like one giant meal or two a day and snacks, but it really was like when you say it, I just have dinner and snacks. That's it. I'm not eating. But if you're like doing 3,000 calories at dinner, well, that's like a whole day's of food, but it was able to be justifiable. So
because it wasn't quantified, right? I would say the same thing that I don't eat that much, but the reality is I did. I never wrote it down. Like it felt like I didn't eat that much, and it's like I wasn't trying to pay attention to what and how often I was eating. That was sort of opposite of what I was going for. All right, so your relationship with food, if I'm going to summarize in the beginning, it was both a tool to be eaten for life, but it was also an emotional coping buddy for you. Like food was there to get you through your hard times, to get you through the difficult times. When you felt overwhelmed, you could turn to food. If it was a great experience, I'm assuming you wanted to heighten the experience with even more food.
For sure. I used to have it like, I would put it somewhere secret, like not hide it. I would tell Carl, like, pay no mind to those brownies in the cupboard. They're up there hiding so that nobody else has them. Like, they're just for you and me. They were just for me, but I wasn't wanting to share any bit of it. So he would be like, hey, is there the reason there's cookies in the bedroom closet? I'm like, yeah, that's just so the kids won't get it. But like,
I mean, it was so the kids won't get it though, right?
Right.
But not for their benefit, was it?
Right. Not from a like, I'm being a supportive mom standpoint. It was like, also, you're not going to have any either, Carl. It's just, just mine alone.
So, okay. So now you've made the first changes on the weight loss journey. You started moving more. What came after the walking? What were some of the next conscious choices you made to change?
I don't know. This is pretty close to when I first found like your TikTok where you were saying, and I don't think you had lost all your weight yet, or you were really close. Like, do you remember when you used to say like, I've lost 95 pounds or 75 pounds? So I think it was about that time where you were talking about just either eating when you were hungry, or it could have been the walking one. It was early 2021. And so it was kind of about that same time where I was like I was hearing from like your TikTok, a couple other TikToks where it was like, just make one little change. I was already doing the walking one. And I think I was like, I'm not going to be snacking anymore, because I definitely gained a lot of weight, death by snacking for sure. So I was like, I'm just going to eat if I'm hungry, because I didn't change any of my food for a while. Like I didn't change how I ate other than I wasn't eating in between meals anymore. So
okay. So you started cutting out snacking and you started eating when you were hungry.
Right.
It's funny. That's what I did, actually. Like it wasn't, it was like, I didn't explicitly say no to snacking. I just noticed I wasn't often actually hungry between meals.
Right. I did eat breakfast. I started eating like a breakfast, a small one, baby steps, but I didn't have any snacks unless it was like, I'm starving, I have to. I did a lot of snacking, so that made sense.
Snacking was your jam.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think I even tracked food for the first easy 9 months. Like it wasn't until much later that I was like, let me see how many calories I'm actually eating and how many I could have. And I think when my first calorie allowance was like 2,000 is how many I could have. And when I went to go track it, I was eating like 2,200. So I was still kind of I would definitely have been in a deficit, but just not a very big one. It was like
been a very teeny
maintenance one, right? So I was seeing changes, but by the time I started tracking, I was already thinking this might be working. Like I had already lost 20 pounds just by making these, like, I'm not going to have any snacks and I'm just going to walk a little bit. No commitment on steps either. So at 3:15,
you just started walking, started eating when you were hungry, which resulted in a lot less snacking. And you're saying you lost 20-ish pounds?
Right.
Wow. That's how all right. How did that feel to see that happen? Like you knew you were making choices and you knew the scale was going down, but you weren't dieting.
Right. I just kept saying like, am I going to do this forever? Okay, I could do this forever. Every time I've ever done a diet, like pick one, Octavia, I was like, I could do this forever. I can absolutely do this forever. And I would say like, this is a lifestyle change. Like it's really, lifestyle change. I'm only going to eat meat from now on forever. That's it.
This is me now. I don't eat meat.
Correct. I'm just going to, or any of the other ones. I've done so many. But then when I was like really honestly like auditing whether or not I would actually, could I walk in between flights? Yes. Can I not have snacks if I'm not hungry? Yes. So it was kind of this checks and balance with like, am I really okay having this life? Because I never went out like, this particular time, I don't know that it was my intention to lose weight as much as it was like, I'm just going to see what happens. Because if I make this a diet, it's not going to work. Diets don't work. So really honestly evaluating every little change that I made, is this going to be something I will do or can do forever?
Okay. So you did this, what I believe is the most effective, but also the most painfully slow way. You literally took it one single decision and change at a time.
Absolutely, for sure.
which did not result in rapid weight loss, did it?
No. I really wanted it to be, I'm not losing weight. I'm having a new life. Like, this is just going to be my life now. Instead of it being,
That's
I'm trying to
powerful.
lose weight. This is just my life now. And is this a life I can do, or do I want it even?
Wow. So how is your feelings towards yourself changing in these first 20 pounds?
I felt pretty good about it. I think my doctor kind of was getting involved at this time, saying like, I thought you weren't going to lose any weight. Because I had told her I told her we were not discussing this ever again. So don't bring up my weight ever again. So she was like, hey, you're kind of losing some weight. What are you doing? But I think she had gotten involved and was asking a lot of questions. But I think it was kind of, whenever you go to the doctor and you've lost weight, it feels like the Golden Globes of weight loss, where you're like, yeah, I did that. It was hardly nothing. I hardly had to do anything at all. Just naturally talented. So I was feeling pretty good. Like, that wasn't that hard. Like, that, it wasn't. And in the beginning, when you are like 318, 20 pounds, 25 pounds is really kind of quick to come off, comparatively speaking, as probably also why all those like fad diets are so, like, you want to do them so badly, and they look like successful because you do lose that beginning weight in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels pretty good. It keeps you going. But because it was something I accepted as this is just my life, it didn't have to be motivationally driven anymore. It was like, this is just an acceptance of fact. I don't have to outrun how long I want to do it.
What do you mean by that? It wasn't motivationally driven anymore.
All of my other weight loss attempts, it was always, I'm really excited to do this program. And then you kind of have to go as fast as you can, because you're not going to be really excited about it in 4 weeks. So it was like, how much weight can I lose before I'm not excited about doing this anymore? So this time I wasn't, when I initially started, I wasn't coming at it from a standpoint like that before. It was very different. It was a marked different way to go at it than any other time.
You weren't racing against your willpower this time.
Mm-hmm. No.
Do you think that's a critical reason why you were successful this time?
Yes, for sure. I don't really start things. I don't really finish things I start. And I do, and now looking back, I do finish a lot of things I start, but I just have these things you kind of like, oh, I just don't, that's just how it is. I got to outrace my own brokenness to be able to be successful. Like, I have to do it right now or it's not going to work.
Right.
But this time it was very different. It was like, no, this is it. This is my life. And I think I even kind of thought like, and I still do, when I was coming into maintenance, I thought the same thing. This is how I'm going to live my life. I like how it is. I like how it feels. I like the difficulty setting. So if this isn't effective, that's still fine, because this is a better situation than what I have over here. So like, maintenance for me is the same. It's the same life I had 6 months ago.
Which is such an important thing for people to hear, is like, yeah, if you're doing this in the way it certainly I believe to be right, it's the way I did it, and you're doing it, and so I may be biased, but it's not really anything should change when you're done with weight loss, other than you just get to eat a little bit more food. Like, nothing really else should change, because you like the life you're living.
Right.
Now, you mentioned it was 20, 30-ish pounds. Then you decided you wanted to start tracking calories. Is that what I heard correctly? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'd love to hear how this decision to start tracking calories came to be. Like, was this something you had been considering for a while? Was it something that was decided in the spur of a moment? Did somebody teach you? Did you learn it yourself? Like, how did you go from not doing it at all to making for what many people are going to think is a big deal, to adding calorie tracking into your life? Especially considering that you said you weren't dieting. Many people would say that was dieting to do that.
I don't know I had been hearing about calorie tracking. I had only ever tracked food via like points, or actually that was the only other time I've ever tracked food. I think I had made MyFitnessPal for various attempts before, but never had really done it. I didn't own a food scale before either. I'd never had one, but there was like, I would buy prepackaged foods a lot for different programs, so I knew about that, but I never tracked calories. I think I was learning about it just online with different various weight loss people online. Because that was like mid 2021, and I tracked mostly just for awareness. I'm a little bit resistant to calorie tracking. I just kind of feel a kind of way about it, especially then, because I was worried about being restrictive and causing any more problems. Because I was kind of like I was losing weight and I didn't want to rock the boat almost. Like, this is working. I don't want to change anything. I want to keep it going. But I also felt like maybe having some awareness of what I was actually intaking. And it was just the people I was seeing online were doing it, talking about it. So I was like, maybe I should just see what my calories are at. And I had done a macro calculator or something where it told you how many calories and what your macros should be at. And that was like overcomplicating a really simple process. So I just did the calorie tracking for a while. I never was like super consistent with it. I think the longest I ever tracked calories in one session was 8 or 9 weeks. I just wanted to see where I was in like at that moment without changing anything at all, because it wasn't a catalyst for change either. It wasn't like I ate it and was like, I tracked it and it changed a lot of things. It was like I tracked it, now I know where I'm at or what I can adjust, swap for to make these kind of things in my life work.
Sounds like you're saying the tracking was truly just data. Like it was, it sounds like you're saying is like the point of tracking was just to have the information so you could look at it and make decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't think it was a tool to stay in my calories or to eat up to my calories. I never really did that. I would be like, oh, I'm eating more than this amount, or I'm eating less than this amount. Let me see what I can swap out in my normal
Gives you
day-to-day.
Like something to compare against. I think of this like because I still track every 4 months or so for a couple of weeks. And a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm calibrating my intuition is how I phrase it, where it's like I'm used to just sort of picking foods, listening to my hunger, but I have seen it as tremendously easy to inadvertently bring in 500 more calories a day, 1,000 calories, not 1,000, but 500 calories a day and not notice through just 25 calories here, 100 calories there. Like, it's so easy. And I like to track periodically, in many cases, to go like, I'm going to just eat what I'm going to eat, but I'm writing it down. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the week, I'm going to look and see what the total was. I don't know what the total is going to be. It's not about changing any decisions at the time of tracking. It's just about documenting so that after the fact, I can review it and make updates.
Right.
Is that similar to kind of how you were approaching it on the weight loss phase?
For sure. Absolutely. It gave me some like places I could see where maybe I should switch out this mayo for a lighter version, because there's kind of a lot of calories in the scheme of things, like how many it is.
Right. When you're restricting the calorie intake for the purposes of weight loss, like there's still plenty of calories, but yeah, you do have to make concessions some places, and yeah, mayo is a big one.
That was a one. I'm really grateful for it too, because when you get down to like a maintenance calorie range, it's a much smaller window, and those changes how I learned to make those swaps early on. Now it's really easy to look at it and even think like, I need more protein today. I'm going to add this blended cottage cheese to this pasta sauce. That'll do it. Done. So I'm really glad I did it early on, so I knew how to do swapping.
So I in the guild I teach about it. It's a concept called caloric awareness. It's why I think everybody should track at least for a little bit, so that they bring that awareness to the calories that are in their foods. It sounds like for you were really seeking to gain that awareness, even though you probably weren't calling it that, but like you were expanding and increasing your awareness to the energy that was in the foods you were and were not consuming. Is that what was happening? Mm-hmm. How did that help you as you moved through your journey?
I think it helped me like deal with satiety, like by having different kinds of foods. I was able to look at what I was eating and then compare that to how I felt or how my hunger was, how I was sleeping. If I have foods, if I don't have a lot of fibery foods, my digestion system isn't very good. And it was like, I can see exactly, I'm not feeling well. Here's what I've been eating. If I'm not feeling well now, or I'm tired and I am sleeping enough, what's going on? And I'll like track my food and I'll find something like, oh, I'm eating past this time of day where like I can't eat an hour or so before I go to bed, or I wake up in the middle of the night with a hurt stomach. I have to like have my body working on digesting before I lay down. But I think I'm I am a really fine-tuned, like a well-tuned machine at this point. Like I know what kind of foods I need for what, to what end. And when I don't feel good, I'm like, oh, I'm not eating enough, whatever, fill in whatever macro.
But you've been paying attention to it now for years. So you've noticed and spotted trends with your own body.
For sure. I am what is it you said, subject matter expert?
On yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. You should be the subject matter expert on yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because you're the only one that can study these feelings firsthand. Now, you mentioned earlier, though, that food was a big part of your life emotional eating-wise, for both the good and the bad. Well, often just doing some movement and eating when one is hungry, that doesn't always fix that. How did you address the emotional eating?
Honestly, it was when we did the Guild. In the Guild, when you did that emotional eating course, I had never put 2 and 2 together that you would have an emotional need or emotional distress and your body would give you a biological response to it. I didn't think that was...
What do you mean?
The one that I'm really thinking of that was like this light switch for me was when my daughter was sick in the hospital. She was in the ICU and we had been doing that emotional eating course. We had a meeting. It was a Wednesday. And I said, I had been having a little bit of exposure therapy to peanut butter cups and had them every day in my lunch. And I was sick of them by day 5. Like when I tell you I had a peanut butter cup thing, I like ate them like a religion. It was like I would chew all the outside edges off. It was a very sacred ritual of having them and savor every little bit. So by the time day 5 in a row of having them, when I had no emotional need for them, but this was before I knew that was even the reason, I was like, I'm sick of them. And I told some other guildies in a breakout room, I don't like peanut butter cups at all. The chocolate tastes old. It's gritty. The peanut butter is not even that great. Like, I'm really shocked I don't like it because I was like, the discovery of this was that I don't like them. But the following day we were in the hospital with Haley and I was like very upset. They were going to keep her in ICU and I wasn't able to spend the night, but I could stay during the day. And they wanted some supplies for her from home. She wanted like her bed stuff they were going to put her under and her own nightgown and stuff. So I was gearing up to go home and as I get in the car, I'm loading up and I just instantly was like, I just really want to stop for some peanut butter cups right now. Like it was just an instant thought. And I was like, yeah, I do want them. And I'm like pulling out of the parking lot on my way and I'm like passing all these stores that have them. And I'm like, but I knew I didn't like them. Like I had said it yesterday, the day before, I don't like these. So it was just like, why do I want them if I don't like them? It was such a weird thing. And then I had to evaluate like, oh, because I'm upset. It was just like, I had never had a situation where it was so very obvious that my go-to solution for feeling better in a helplessness, because in that situation I was pretty helpless to your kid going to the hospital. You have no control, but this is something I could control, and it's something that I would go to feel both more in control and just some sort of comfort of it being like a familiar thing I would do. I didn't get the peanut butter cups. I got my journal instead. I was like, let me just write about this because it was such a like, my body doesn't want peanut butter cups. It's trying to tell me that I need to do something about this. That's an emotional problem. But my body's response is biological. Like, you should probably bump up that blood sugar a bit. You'd feel better.
So your awareness had increased to the point where when you saw that craving for a peanut butter cup, you were able to recognize that this is actually not a craving for a peanut butter cup. It's a craving to change your emotional state. Mm-hmm. I'm using my own wording here, and your body wanted to feel better. And so it was going to, well, this works. This has worked in the past. Is that what it was?
Yeah, very much like this is how you fix this. Like the path of least resistance that I've always done. My brain was like, oh, yep, she's upset. Check. Go to the grocery store. You're going to get some peanut butter cups. You'll
firing off the old pattern. Go do what we've always done.
Yep.
So the emotional eating course that you went through, yes, which is something we offer in the Guild, but it sounds like you were losing weight then, because I know when you were in the Guild, you had already lost quite a bit. You had lost quite a bit of weight without having fully addressed your emotional eating. What do you think would have happened if you'd never addressed your emotional eating? Do you think you'd have made it as far as you've made it?
No way. No way. The pull of that, And it's pretty easy to sit here and say, absolutely no
Well,
way.
sure, it's easy to say all this on this side, but
Right.
this is why we're
Right.
here.
But I do think like the pull of that day was so obvious and so like
But you were
contrary.
But you were looking.
Right. But I would never have known. I would have just gone.
It would have been just an instinct to go get the peanut butter cup and move on.
Correct. Or what restaurant has the best dessert? Like I knew what restaurant would have the best dessert option. So I'd go there for dinner and to have the best dessert when you're feeling funky. It was like the go-to solution. It was so obvious that particular day, but there was still a change in it. I didn't know that I was making any like mindset changes along the way until I was like in the guild for sure. I feel like the other stuff was very easy. I still had a lot of weight to lose because I was still like 230, 240 when I joined the guild. So I had lost 100 pounds, but had 100 more to go, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the practical stuff, but I don't think I was doing mindset stuff until I got into the guild where other than accepting that this is just my life. And if it matches up with my life, but that's kind of data driven, really. That's like you could almost check the boxes. Does this line up with what I want? Yes. Okay, I'm going to keep doing it.
So what, you mentioned the mindset. You also did the mindset work. What's some of the shifts in mentality you've had? Like where things that you just see, you just see it differently or think differently than you did at 315 versus your current weight? And I know, and it's not because of the weight, but just as an illustration of these two different ways of living.
I don't know. I think that associating weight is okay because it is like I'm more confident. I don't even know if it's even weight related or just time, but I was really defensive before. I couldn't take any kind of feedback or criticism at all. And I would always be looking for the dig when anybody would talk to me, because it just validated what I thought about myself was true. Like you're lazy or ignorant and not ignorant, like you just don't know, but like stupid, just fat, lazy. Everybody else has their shit together and you don't. So anytime I would hear somebody say like, why can't you get this done on time? Or why didn't you get this done on time? I'm like, it just validated things about myself I didn't like. So I was it was almost impossible to talk to and say any kind of constructive feedback or this could be a better way to do it. I was probably very difficult to live with my family. Just, I took everything really super personal. I'm more adventurous. I want to try new things.
Now you do.
Yeah, for sure. Before I would have been, I don't want anything to like let anybody else think I'm stupid too. Like it was like, I won't do anything.
So you wouldn't take chances where you might fail because it might give people a reason to go, oh, wow, look, she's actually not smart. Like,
right.
So imposter syndrome.
For sure. I think I still have that. I feel like I lucked my way into it.
I think. I still deal with it too.
It's such a wild dynamic because I'm like, I was born overweight. I didn't get this. This is just something I am. And then over here, I'm like, I just lucked my way over here. It just happened. It's like,
oh, yeah. I very much felt like I got over here by luck. It took a while for me to realize, like, no, I actually did things. It wasn't by luck. Sure, there were plenty of things I did where I got lucky by mistake. Yeah, that's true. And it'll be the same for you. There are going to be things you did that if you hadn't have done them, you wouldn't have been successful, but you did them by mistake. It wasn't due to a plan. That's true. But there's a lot of things you did that if you, like the walking, that was a plan. That was a choice. You made a plan and you did it. That made the difference. And yeah, you're right. It's so easy to focus on the part where we got lucky and say that that's everything. But it's like, but no matter what, there's always an element of luck to success.
Right.
I mean, it's got to be right time, right place with the right plan.
And the right attitude to be even willing to try it. Like there is a willingness to even try, because I really before that was like, never again, never. And then here we are.
Now, what about your belief systems around food? How have those shifted over the course of your journey?
I don't eat food I don't like. And if I was served pizza, for example, I would eat it, but now I'll like take a bite and be like, this is not great. But before I would have just, it's good enough. I eat food I enjoy. I think sometimes people think I'm weird because I ate cake for lunch one time, which cake is not a lunch meal.
It's not. Cake is not a meal.
My weight loss coach would say it's not. It's not a
cake.
Meal.
It's a treat.
But I have like I just kind of feel untethered to food, where before it felt like Everything I did was, where's the closest restaurant? Anytime I went on vacation or went somewhere, it was like, where are we going to eat? It was like you plan everything around food.
That sounds like a
food's like an
ton
afterthought.
of food noise before.
Yeah.
Like you were always thinking about is what you're describing.
Yeah, and probably because I was in some sort of crazy weird deficit all the time, or binging. It was like some sort of one or the other. But I do stuff without, I'll be like, oh man, I haven't eaten. Like it's not the first thing I think about when I wake up or what the last thing I think about when I go to bed. But it used to be. It used to be something I thought about all the time.
How did you get from there to here? Do you know?
I think it's the miracle of time.
I mean, time is our ally and it's going to do something anyway, but you're right. But so that was your answer. Time, you had to let time work for you.
Time and the like tiny little showing up and doing what you say you're going to do. If you do the tiny little thing you say you're going to do enough times, eventually your whole being recognizes that you do what you say you're going to do. And if you said you're going to do it, you're going to do it.
Well, now speaking of time, though, one of the problems that people have with time is if enough time passes, a person's going to fail and screw up somehow. And a lot of people, when they're wanting to lose weight, they are looking for the perfect run, the perfect streak, right? Let me get it right. I've learned that there's no such thing. And let's go ahead and anecdotally prove this. Did you have any major setbacks on your journey from 315 to now?
Lots. The one with Haley was sick in the hospital. I got a health diagnosis that is like a non-curable disease, which I was like, well, if that doesn't say just fuck it, I don't know what does. Like I'm just going to lose the weight in spite of this being something that's very serious. I broke my sternum at one point. I thought that was going to be it because I couldn't move at all.
Did you ever lose control with food along the way down and just eat way more than you planned? Did the emotions or the food ever get the better of you?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I still would have times where I still have times where I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to eat this and whatever comes from it, comes from it. It's way less frequent, super rare. And the distance between the two is so far away. It's like there were times where it would be like I would have a cheat weekend. I would have a diet week and a cheat weekend.
Which is enough to undo the whole week, plus more the other way.
Correct.
Yep.
They're like, I'm still gaining weight on this terrible diet and binging all weekend. But it was like, there were times where it was like, let me just see if I can go a whole day without having any binging. Let me see if I can go a whole week without having any binging. And I just got really good at making myself a science experiment. The time between binging or even eating outside of what I expected it's so rare now.
Well, it sounds like you just failed constantly.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at it. Pretty good at failing.
But it sounds like you're really good at what comes after the failure.
Doing it again, picking yourself up.
How was that? Do you have any moments that particularly stand out in your mind where you failed and you had to really get yourself back up? Like it seemed harder than some of the others. Like there was more shame, more guilt, more, oh, I'm too far gone or anything like that. Yeah.
When we did the Tampa Tough Mudder and I came back, I had been slowly putting on weight and I was like, I couldn't figure it out. I had a underlying health thing. It turned out later, but this weight just kind of kept coming on. And I was like doing all the things and I couldn't figure it out with tracking. It was still coming on. So and it was very public. Like I'm in the guild with a lot of people and I felt like, oh no, they're all just going to think I'm a failure. And I was like so worried. And then that like emotionally is high. Your emotions are really high with that. I was like, I don't think I ever really there was just so much support, I think, in the group, but in a parallel universe without that, I definitely that probably would have been it. And it would have been really embarrassing because it was like 150. So I was like, now I'm at 150 and
it's going to slip away from your fingers. I'm going to slip back to
320. And I'm going to go to 340 now because my MO is to bump up and escalate. But I did have a lot of support that were like, what's your data points? Look at this. Just keep on staying the course. Candace, my OSP group, they were all really, really helpful and like, stay the course. You're doing the right thing. And it ended up being a health issue that was resolved. But in a different world, I would have said, that's it. That would have been it.
So you had to lean on your community, a very supportive community during that period where despite your best efforts, you were still gaining weight because you didn't know there was an underlying health thing contributing.
Right. And it didn't feel like in the past when I would have an obstacle, it would be a week maybe. I mean, early dieting, it was just such a small change that
there wasn't much to fail.
There's not really a lot of obstacles to fail, right? I set myself up for success.
That's
sure.
a really important thing that I did. Yeah, it was I like cheat, stack the deck for success, right? Like you're right. If you don't, you have to humble yourself to take small steps forward because then you can't there's not much to fail on.
It's like setting the bar so low that you just got to get up and not do one thing. It definitely was a really set bar low. But when I would have a failure somewhere across the time, I was like a week out before, like that might be the longest time. But the Tampa one, I came back, that was like 4 or 5 weeks. I still did stay the course and I kept saying like, I'm going to keep doing the things, but it did feel a kind of way. And I think if I didn't have the support of other people who were like, no, you're doing the right thing. This is keep on keeping on. Like I was able to reach out anytime it got heavy or dark. And it sounds kind of silly, like it was such a small little thing, but it didn't feel like a really small thing. It felt like this weight loss was so new, so fragile, and it was just going to be snatched in any second. Like I would just wake up tomorrow, and I think I even had a dream one time where I woke up and I was back to my own weight, like the morning, and in the dream I had woken up 318. So, you just have this whole dream where you're back at start weight again. And so I woke up in a huge panic, like feeling my whole body. Like, is it here?
I still will wake up and be afraid some mornings to lift up the blanket.
Like,
and I know logically there's no reason to be, but I'm like, I can feel it. I'm fat again.
Right.
Like it's so, when you get, the way I've realized is like, you cannot spend that many years severely overweight and for many people into the very obese and it not have an effect on your mind. I mean, because you have to play so many mental tricks with yourself to allow yourself to get that big. Because we both have done it. At our biggest, I'm at the thinnest, most in shape I've ever been actually. And I don't know where you measure up for you, but I know if it's not the most, it's among the best in your life. And you and I could both, I'm going to speak on your behalf, but everything about my bigger body was way more uncomfortable compared to what I have now. There's nothing better about that bigger body. It was very, very, very uncomfortable to live in it. And I had to convince myself that it was okay. I had to somehow make it okay in my mind. Like, and that had carryover effects because deeply to my core, I'd managed to trick myself where if I looked in the mirror, I did not see how big I was. Like when I lost my weight and somewhere along the journey, my brain picture updated and I could see how small I actually am. But what that also did was made my old picture look more like how it actually looked. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I could see how my head looked like a basketball. I had no idea how round my head was and how much fat I had in my cheeks alone.
How little your eyes were. Like I was like, I don't even have eyes in these photos.
Right. I used to think my smile got bigger, but I actually took photos and put them up. My smile was the same size. No, my cheeks were just that big. It made my smile look smaller. But like that messes with you. Like you have to trick your brain to be that big.
Yeah. It's like your body, I think your brain does a really good way of like protecting you. Because when I saw that photo, I was like, that was a whole thing. Because it was just so real. Like,
it's a rude awakening.
For sure. I wouldn't have thought that I was, it's so wild. Even now, like when I look back at my other photos, I'll find them and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Because I remember being in there in that minute. But you're right. I probably just had glossed over it because it was so shocking. Seeing myself even now, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how am I even sitting in that? Like, or you see yourself in a photo and there's no chair, but there is one. I know there's a chair there.
Right, because you're sitting.
But where did it go? It's wild.
It really is, yeah. And so as the journey was progressing, you're losing weight, you're experiencing failure, you're coming back from it. You had people probably notice, I'm assuming. I mean, I know because you've told me. So you probably got the same question I did. What are you doing? How are you losing weight? When you were on the journey, how did you answer that question? When somebody has seen that you have lost 100 pounds, 130 pounds, and you're still going, what would you tell them?
I always redirect them to your podcast, honestly, because at first I would kind of talk it out, but you could just see once you say, oh, I'm just calorie tracking or I'm eating less, moving more. That was kind of my default. I'm eating less, moving more, feeling pretty good.
Technically correct.
And they would just gloss over. I think they expected me to be like, oh,
Where's the hack? Where's the trick?
I'm just not I'm only eating celery on Tuesdays is what they wanted. And they would just stop listening. So it's a whole thing. But then I eventually would say either that, and I work with a lot of people, so I even still get a lot of comments about it, which have died down, but I still get a lot. I would say calories in, calories out. I think when you did the Good Morning America show, it was like the article was on the front page of the computers in the morning. So I came into work and Mary said, "Is this your weight loss coach?" And I was like, or I think they said, "Is Chris Terrell your weight loss coach?" I was like, "Yes, that's oddly specific." Like, yes. Oh, you must have listened to the podcast thinking finally someone had listened.
Right.
But that was all everybody was talking about was that. And then they were asking more questions about the podcast. So I was able to share more about it really not being magic. It was just time.
Yeah, I found
calories out.
People were looking for a trick, a magic thing, a hack. They did not. I found it very difficult to tell people. In fact, I made a whole business around it, and I spend years teaching people how to do it. Like, because I've realized now, like, okay, you're 300 pounds and you want to be 130 pounds. I can teach you everything you need to know to do it and stay there for the rest of your life, but it's going to take 2 years. Like, it's probably going to take me about 2 years because some things you have to just learn firsthand. Like, because I look at my journey, there are too many things that I had to learn it the hard way. I had to have an experience. I had to fail. I had to get that lesson from it, and I had to apply it. There are too many times where I had to just grind and figure out how to eat in a way that I like that fits my calorie needs. Like, I needed to battle my hunger so I could learn to have it not rule my damn life. I needed these experiences. You could put them in a book. I mean, I got the books about it behind me right here. But they're no substitute for just firsthand learning. And like you said, with time, I'm curious for you as somebody that's lost weight, if you were given the mission of telling somebody how to do it, do you think a person could learn how to do this in less than a year or two?
No. And if you could, you wouldn't be able to keep it. Yeah, you could lose weight rapid fire, but are you going to be able to keep it off? No.
Yeah, I really believe now that for a person, the weight gaining problem we're having in the world is most people they're not addressing that problem. They're trying to address, how do I lose weight quickly? Like that's the answer. Everything is, how do I lose weight fast? And they think it's a medical thing, which, yeah, okay, I'm sure there's some medical factors for a lot of people. But I definitely believe it's a psychological thing. I think mental health plays a massive role in the weight problem in the world. I think technology, while great in many areas of life, has made things very stressful for humans. We're more stressed than we've ever been as a society. And that plays a role. We've made more hyper-palatable food. So the environment has made it very easy to get to hyper-palatable, cheap calories that are devoid of protein and fiber. But I also think, in addition to all of the environmental, addition to the mindset, I think it's also a knowledge thing. People just don't know things. Like, I had never been aware of what NEAT movement was. I thought the way you lose weight is by exercising.
I would agree.
Right? It's like, no, these are different. I needed to know there's a difference. I needed to know about glycogen. I didn't need to know much about it. I just needed to know it weighs 5 pounds, it's short-term energy, and it sometimes goes up and down. Like, I don't know that a person needs to know more than that to be successful, right? You know, I think there's a lot of things like these where it's like, I just needed to know them. What about you? Would you agree with that there's like a person needs to just learn a lot of things that they don't know?
Right. Yeah, I do. I think that when I was younger, I didn't have any access to any kind of like information on how your body works or why it works the way it works. Yeah. What is it? The thermal effect of food. I was like, I think there's like check boxes and different calorie tracking things. I'm like, well, leave all this off because I don't know what any of these things are. Yeah. There's just not enough information out there to be had. If there was, then all these other weight loss programs would have worked.
Right. And I think sometimes people are trying to fast track the learning. The knowledge I found for how to lose weight technically is very simple. It's the practical application that's hard. It's how do you find a way of eating that you enjoy that is less volume? You know, how does one deal with emotional eating? You know, something I did different on my journey that sounds like you did as well is, and again, I know I was a coach role in your life too, so I know I taught you many of these things as well, but it sounds like you were doing some of it before. First was you were focusing on just doing things you could do, right? You were setting yourself up for victory. So you were thinking about it. Like you were problem solving it, and you weren't just running to somebody else to solve every little thing for you. You were doing it. And then, but it also sounded like you started doing mindset work. You started actually doing the personal development stuff. I saw you in the guild meetings all the time. So you were showing up and doing the learning, the mental work. Were you also doing that behind the scenes? Like, because again, I would see you in a guild meeting, but I don't know what you're doing when I didn't see you.
Yeah, I really like learning about things. If I know something exists, I need to know how and why it exists. So I've got to like deep dive all kinds of things. Like the self-development, developing myself has always been something I was very interested in. So if I heard you talk about, I don't know, the metabolism, for example, then I would be like, to the library, like I'm going to go find books about this to understand it more. I think if I
So
really
you
needed to know
invested
the
your
why.
time learning and trying to understand why.
Why? I'm a why person, and I can do actions. I want to know how to fix this kind of thing. But it really, like I knew, even when I was younger, it was like very clear if I just ate less, I would lose weight. So that's not enough to just know, you got to, like I had to know why that worked for me to be able to like get it into my core of me, like something that I'll accept and move on. It was really important for me to know why I made the choices I made, and why do I go to peanut butter cups, for example, or why do I go to this instead of this? So I think if it's got to be more, the mental stuff is so much more important, I feel like, because even if I have 2,000 calories a day, if you can't fix that mindset about it, it doesn't matter if you know it. How are you going to apply it? What's the hang up there?
I never did any mindset work until I did. And when I did, it worked. All my previous weight loss journeys were completely devoid of the mindset, leveling up myself. And I went from doing it none to, it was probably the central thing I was doing, was working on myself, working on my mind, working on my heart, working on my emotions, working on my life, my finances. Like it was working on me. And I do believe doing all of that is a big part of why I was successful with my weight loss. Like I am a better person on the other side, not because I lost weight, not at all. It's I made myself happier. I found a better life that I enjoyed. I found a way of living that made me happy. And I found I didn't want to emotionally eat as much, right? I didn't have to tell myself not to do it. I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And then, of course, as I had more increase in awareness with food, it became easier to be like, oh, I should pick this over this because this has 500 more calories in it than the other. But I'm curious for you, was mindset present in your other journeys in the past? And how big of a role did mindset and personal growth play for you in this journey?
This one was huge. Every other time in the past, it's always been a math equation. Always. This is your input. This is your output. SECO wasn't a new, I don't know what the word is I'm thinking of. Like it wasn't a new idea. I knew about it. So it was really like, I'm going to eat less. I'm going to exercise. But it did always have to be some sort of crazy exercise. It couldn't just be walking. This was the first time I was like, I know I'm not going to do that, so I'll try this. Yeah, it was really, but I do think that understanding, it was like the human element is missing from that. The Misty element that changed the dynamic to be something that's doable. This whole time it was like, is this doable? Yes, why is this doable? Or if I'm coming up against, and the way I live my life is so perfectly perfect for me. Like I just really love it. So anything weird feels like so out of place. Like if I have a weird feeling or a weird craving, it's almost like, well, where is this coming from? Like, what is going on here? It's instantly like something's weird in the force. I gotta figure it out. Something's not right.
I've noticed that, if I'm craving certain foods, like Five Guys for me, if I'm craving it, something's wrong because I don't normally crave it. And that's one of my emotional eating places is Five Guys. And so it's like, I think I have something inside me that I need to address and deal with.
And get over it, right?
Yeah. But the journey taught me that because I started, let's make myself happier. Mm-hmm. But I had to separate, like losing weight doesn't make one happy and being happy doesn't make one lose weight. But if you're an emotional leader like I was, it's going to help. Yeah. It's going to help a lot.
I don't know if it was like, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to redefine my life. And I don't know if I cleaned up my life and bettered it because I do think my emotional maturity and like my mental health is so much better. My self-esteem is so much better. I used to say yes to every single thing that would come across my plate because I didn't want to say no to anything. Like I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings ever. Such a people pleaser-y kind of thing. just a doormat. It was just insane. So I don't know if the weight loss was a byproduct of like cleaning up my life and working on my mental health, or if the cleaning up my life and the mental health was a byproduct of losing the weight. They're so tangled.
They are. And I feel very much the same way. It's so mixed in. And with so many people I've worked with, I've seen that if a person can't just track calories and lose weight, we need to look at why, right? And I have found in my work that when we start looking at why, it's because of emotional eating in many cases, but also when we start getting to the core of the emotional eating, we see that, oh, there's something about your life that you are deeply dissatisfied with. Why aren't you fixing it? Mm-hmm. And then I talk and they find because they think it's impossible, or they think it'll make someone unhappy, or it requires a price to fix that they're unwilling to pay. And unfortunately, I find for many people, we find 4 or 5 things in their life like that. It's very rarely just one. Now, it's not everybody that has this, but I gotta say, it is in my years of doing this, that is really, really common. Maybe even the majority where this is prevalent. I've yet to meet a person that's over 300 pounds that doesn't have some amount of emotional eating in their life. They might be out there. I've just never met them yet.
Right. It's reasonable to think that like in a group of people who need to lose weight, that there's like some impulsivity and people pleasing aspect and emotional eating that goes with that. Yeah. It's a very reasonable assumption. I think I don't know what the solution is other than like for me, it's what are my new coping mechanisms going to be in developing them. But I'm just really super selfishly like protective of like my lifestyle and myself. Like I've never been a selfish person ever, but I'm pretty selfish about my life now.
You're a champion of yourself, number one champion.
For sure. I used to always be like, oh, you're my number one. I am my number one fan for sure. But I used to have different ones, but it's me. I'm my number one fan for sure.
So if I may ask now, we'll start winding our way towards the end here, which thank you for sharing the story. This has been, I've really enjoyed hearing all this. You're now at the phase where I remember being there myself, where the weight loss has now gone from something I've needed to do to something I've done. And you found yourself at the place where for the first time in your life, you don't need to lose any more weight. Even a doctor would tell you to don't lose any more weight. I remember being there the first time ever, I legitimately did not need to lose another pound. I had never lived life that way. This is very new to you. Mm-hmm. What's it like right now with the newness of that?
It was weird. Like I had a surgeon say, you can't lose any more fat from your body. Because I was like, not even from here? Not even from here. And he was like, no more. So I kind of having to loosen the reins and even just say, after like 3 years, I just kind of eat in a deficit. I sit in hunger sometimes, but not like a lot anymore. I've kind of really gotten to volume. My hunger is pretty on point. So that part was easy, but like I was like, I can't have more food. Like that, adding more food was a bit scary. I just had to lean into data points. Like adding more food isn't gaining any weight, but not gaining weight or eating in a deficit has been such a long time that it felt really weird to come out of that.
To turn it off. And
also like the good part and the exciting part is like, what else can I do with my body? That's a weird thing to think when I didn't know. I never thought of that before. Like in fitness, what's the next thing? I'm not the best fitness person. I'm working on it, but I do have like, could I climb this? Like, could I go rock climbing? It's an exciting thing to not be prohibited by a body shape or size.
Right. Not to have it limiting you because it just can't do it.
Yeah. I really never thought of what's the next thing I can do, because now I'm not putting so much energy into losing weight, and staying the same weight isn't as much energy either.
So if I could, let's do a little thought experiment. Imagine if this microphone was connected to you at day one, right? When you first started changing, right? And the you in the beginning said, what's it like to be on that side? What would you say?
Peaceful. I think I would say it was so peaceful. Like, I feel like my life was really tumultuous before, really chaotic and disappointing. Okay. But over here, it's exciting. The chaos is gone, muted at least.
What would you say about the food? Remember, that girl is just constantly thinking about food all the time. What would you tell her about that?
First, that it's going to be okay, because that was really, like, if food is your only coping mechanism, it's a really scary thing to not have it be that. Like, that's a lifeline, right? I would say that I would be okay. You'll be okay. And that it's so good. Like, it's not 400 calories over here or a crust of bread and water. It's not skipping meals. It's not having small, tiny baby meals either. I have really good food over here. It's exciting to try new things. I have had to like broaden my palate a little bit from the food I used to eat before. Like I'll try more things because I want to find better options and experiment, but it's good. It's good over here.
Yeah. Was it worth it? Would if she was saying, is it worth all the effort? What would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think even if this side was still tumultuous, it would still be better than the other side.
And in one of the questions that many ask in the beginning, or not ask, but a fear people will share is they're worried about loose skin. They're worried about the signs that their body was once very overweight. What would you say to her if she was worried about that?
We're going to get rid of my loose skin. So it's a problem I'm going to solve. But I would, even if I wasn't going to have this skin removal, I would rather have loose skin tucking it into every little thing than to have the weight. And I have a lot of loose skin.
So it was worth the trade.
Absolutely.
Worth the trade.
I would still do it. I wouldn't go back and change anything other than I just wish I had done it sooner. But everything about it was like exactly how it was supposed to be, how it worked. It was very easy. Had really hard days, but really easy. The years went by really quickly. They were really easy. Hard days for sure. Definitely worth it. I take the skin over most anything.
So wrapping here, last question. I'm going to ask you the question that people ask me all the time too. But what advice would you give to somebody that's just getting started? Now I understand there is no right answer. You ask me this 10 times, I might give you 10 different answers. But what is some advice as somebody that has lost a significant amount of weight, made their way to the clear other side? You didn't stop at the settling weight. You didn't trade being very overweight for being just a little overweight. You went all the way to dream body territory, and you're going beyond. What advice would you give to somebody that's at the beginning?
I would say start small, be patient, and decide what to be and go be it.
I love it. And what tools, what would you tell that person in the beginning? This is what you're going to need for success.
A good support system, a good community, and people who will build you up when you don't feel like you can be.
Okay. I love it. Misty, thanks so much for sharing your story with everybody. Hopefully it's pretty easy, right? Was it fun to talk about your story like this?
It was pretty fun, yeah.
Sure. Out of curiosity, was any of this stuff you've never really gotten to talk about much? I know
a little bit.
You get to talk about a lot, but
yeah, I'm kind of excited because it's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, hey, if you want to find out more from this, we're going to keep doing more interviews. You can leave, if you're on Spotify, you can leave a comment in the comment section of Spotify. And I'd love to get that. I will be sharing comments back to Misty. So if you want to share anything with her, you're welcome to leave it as a comment there on Spotify as well. And if you want to tap into a community like what she was saying, you can find links to my community by going to christerrellcoaching.com. I got links to my free one as well as to my paid one. Both of them ready to go for you at any time. Misty, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
All right. See everybody later.